everyone. I'm Tova Du Plessis. I'm the owner of Essen Bakery. So we're making black and white cookies. Just going to test my mixer. Okay, yes. It's plugged in and working. This is a stand mixer. Hopefully you have one at home. You can totally use your hand mixer. That works too. Whatever you would use for any like cookie or cake recipe, but you will need some kind of electric mixer. So we're going to start off making the cookie dough batter. And a black and white cookie batter is really more like a cake batter than it is a cookie batter. And I once heard the story, or legend, I should say, that there was some bakery in New York, and people have claims about which was that first bakery that invented black and white cookies, or they're called half moons. I mean, upstate New York. And I think there's a lot of debate over what they're called and where they started. But I did hear a legend that a bakery had a little bit of cake batter left over after, portioning their cakes, and would just bake the cake batter in blobs on a sheet pan and turn them into cookies. So our cake batter is or cookie batter is a little special because it has the addition of orange oil or orange zest. We actually use a high quality orange oil in the bakery, which is pure orange oil. You can find it on Amazon if you look for the Boyajian orange oil. It's a really great product. And then we also have some vanilla. It's the vanilla and the orange zest that really give it the flavor. I'm going to add the butter to my mixer first. So that's the 1 cup of butter and 280 grams of sugar, which is here. And we're going to cream that. So a lot of recipes, a lot of cake and cookie recipes that you've encountered, I'm sure, start with creaming butter and sugar. We call that method of mixing creaming method in baking. The reason for using creaming method is actually to incorporate air. When you cream butter and sugar, I'm sure you've heard you've read in recipes, beat till light and fluffy. It becomes light and fluffy because it's incorporating air, and that's what you want to do. That's how you're creating rise in your product, not just with your leavener, but also with the trapped air in your fat. But in order for your fat to trap air, it has to be room temperature. That is number one most important thing to remember about making cakes and cookie batters, is that your butter has to be room temperature. That means your other ingredients have to be room temperature too, so that it doesn't seize the butter or cool down the butter too much when it hits your butter. So I'm going to cream that. It's going to be a little loud. You can do this on pretty high speed and just, to make it go quicker, and just cream it until it's light and fluffy. Now I've combined my eggs, orange oil, and vanilla all together in one container. And I'm just going to slowly add them into my cream butter and sugar when it's ready. Now, one of the most important things that I'm going to stress about making this recipe is scrape, scrape, scrape. And you'll see that in the recipe. After every step, I put in capital letters scrape. I've actually had this batter in particular messed up so many times in the bakery because it was a new baker who didn't understand the importance of scraping throughout this process. If your ingredients are not evenly incorporated, if it's not a homogeneous mixture, you'll have pockets of fat or pockets of sugar that are going to melt out differently when it bakes, and then you'll have these like deformed, funny-looking cookies. And it's really difficult to actually see that. You may not see it with the naked eye. You may not see that some parts of your batter have more fat or more sugar than others, and which is why you just keep scraping between every step. And there you go. It's light and fluffy. So I'm going to start adding my egg, or my wet ingredients, except for my sour cream. Add in slowly, and just allow each addition to become incorporated before you continue to add. When you're adding water, because eggs are mostly water, to a fat, you're basically creating an emulsion. Just like making mayonnaise or vinaigrette, it's really the same concept. You're adding fat and you're agitating it to make sure that it creates that emulsion. If you add too quickly, you're going to break your emulsion, and that's why recipes will always tell you to add your eggs slowly or one at a time. If you add them all suddenly, you may break that emulsion, and then the fat won't hold the liquid. What we really want is for your butter to be able to hold the amount of liquid that you're adding. And that's why I can't put in my sour cream, because that will be a little too much liquid for my fat to hold. The fat will have a threshold of how much liquid it can hold. I hope that was a little bit of baking knowledge there. I really appreciate when people describe what's happening in baking in terms of other applications, even savory applications. Like I was saying about making an emulsion, it's the same concept whether you're adding eggs to butter or whether you're adding oil to a vinegar to make a vinaigrette, for example. So your mixture should still appear fluffy, and it should not look broken. And I'm sure some of you have broken a cookie or cake batter at this stage. If your butter's too cold, if you added cold eggs to it, you may have broken it. If you added your eggs too fast, you may have broken it. But this is how we want it to look. So I'm going to scrape really well now. And by scrape, I mean just grab a spatula and scrape down all the sides and the bottom. Get every inch of that hole. Okay, now I'm going to alternate my dries and my sour cream. So this would be the salt and baking soda. This is my cake flour sifted. I'm just going to combine all the dry ingredients, including the salt and baking soda. And I'm going to start adding a portion of it, let's say about a quarter. I'll add some of my sour cream. This whole time I'm going on low speed because I don't want to overmix once I've added flour. Your cookie will become too tough. Okay, a bunch more. Some sour cream. Flour. Cream. Just going to put in the rest of the sour cream. And the rest of the flour. again, I'm going to scrape. And now there might be bits of flour all over the place and blobs of sour cream. I'm just going to scrape it all in there. But I'm really going to get all the way to the bottom of the bowl, because that tends to be where the attachment is maybe just a couple millimeters off the bottom, and then you land up with this area on the bottom of your bowl that's just flour, that's just sugar and butter, or just the sugar, butter, egg mixture, which will bake differently to your homogeneous. So I told you to not over mix, but because of how important it is to make sure that this batter is homogeneous, I'm just going to go on high for like 5 seconds. Okay, maybe it was 2 seconds or 3 seconds. All right. Messy job. This is what your batter should look like. It would seem like a little too soft for a cookie batter, maybe a little firm for a cake batter. It's really somewhere in between. Now, there are 2 ways that you can portion your cookies. The way we do it in the bakery is we actually chill our batter really cold. We chill it in the freezer to get it really firm. And then we use a cookie scoop and scoop these like half domes and then freeze those. And we'll make enough for, let's say, the whole week, and then we'll pull out the freezer the cookies that we need for that day, and we'll bake fresh that day. That way, we get a really consistent size with the cookie scoop. But another way to do it is with a piping bag, which is what I'll do now. And it makes it really quick and easy, especially if you're doing the piping bag. Just making sure that I have a really homogeneous mixture. Okay. So I'll cut a really big hole in my piping bag. And then just pipe these really big dollops. I'm piping these really close together because I actually plan to freeze them and bake them another time. But you would actually, if you were baking them, and you can go straight into the oven after you pipe them, you'll space them out significantly like this, because they really spread a lot. They'll become about maybe 4 inches wide, I want to say, 3 to 4 inches wide. Our cookies, we scale ours to be about 85, 90 grams. If that helps, that's about 3 ounces of cookie. Okay, so I'll finish piping those later. And this is where I get to do like the TV magic thing. Look at that, there are our cookies. Ouch, this tray's so hot. No, just kidding. So bake in a 300-degree oven, 300 to 325. Preferably no fan, or if you have a convection oven, low fan. If you have a really powerful fan on them, they can tend to like blow in one direction and become more oval than round. Although even ours don't look completely perfect, going to turn them over, they're pretty good. All right. So for the icing, I gave you 2 recipes. We use a chocolate ganache and a vanilla royal icing. I don't really have time to make them today, but they're really simple and easy to make. And I want to quickly go through those because I did notice I left off a sentence on the Ganache recipe. So please make that note in there. It's 100 grams of heavy cream, tablespoon of, we use glucose syrup, but you can use corn syrup, and dark chocolate. We actually use Valrhona dark chocolate. Ours is 50. I may have to confirm this, but I think it's 53%. So it's not a very high percentage dark chocolate, but you can totally use something that's more like 70. This chocolate that we use from Valrhona has a really nice bitter taste, even though it is a lower percentage cocoa solids. And you would scald your cream and corn syrup. That means that just heat it until it's like almost boiling. Pour it over the chocolate pieces. Let it sit 1 minute. But after that, I forgot to put in the last sentence. After that, you want to stir it until all the chocolate melts and it all comes together. And it should be this really glossy. I hope you can see that. It should look glossy and thick. You will know if you have a broken ganache. It is quite easy to break a ganache. So try to follow those directions exactly to make sure you don't break it. And you would stir. You can actually use a whisk, but just be gentle with your whisk when you're stirring your ganache together. A whisk can incorporate bubbles, and too much bubbles is not what you want. But if you're just gentle with it, it won't really be a problem. Or you could just use a rubber spatula, which is what a lot of pastry chefs do. So I'm going to check out. So this has been sitting. If your ganache gets too thick while it's sitting, you need to heat it back up really gently. Like really, it might only need to be 1 or 2 degrees higher than it is at the moment. Because chocolate has working range, which is a little bit above room temperature. So when it comes down to room temperature, you really only need it maybe like 5 degrees higher and you're good. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to use my gas stove here. I have a metal bowl, so the gas stove will just warm up the metal. The flame will warm up the metal just enough to loosen it. But if you have a plastic container and a microwave, that's a perfect way of doing it, or a double boiler. But I just go right on top of the heat. think it's at a spreadable consistency now. And that's really what you want, is a spreadable consistency. Right after you make the ganache, it might be a little too runny, and you just want it to sit on the table for a little bit before you use it. This is actually perfect. So what I'm going to do is create a line down the center. And I always get a little more on my spatula. I'm using an offset spatula. That's like one of my indispensable tools. I feel like for a pastry chef, this is probably one of your most essential tools. Just like that. And if you're struggling to get the straight line, another trick that I use is, get your chocolate on there. So I'm going to purposefully make a bumpy line. I'm trying to, let's say you go too far or it's bumpy. Just clean off your spatula, and then you could do this. Just wipe it off. And then the white's going to cover up that part. So you can create a line with your spatula. All right. And just leave that there. And I'll go ahead with the vanilla bean royal icing, which is super easy to make. You just mix all the ingredients together. And you can, at the end it says to add tiny bits of water slowly until you get to exactly the consistency that you need, which is thick but spreadable. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to try to talk about myself in the bakery a little bit. For those of you who, well, I don't think I know anyone yet, so I haven't recognized anyone yet, at least. So I'm going to give you a little introduction. My name is Tova. I'm from South Africa. That's the accent. And I moved to Philadelphia. I moved to the States about 15 years ago, but to Philly 8 or 9 years ago. And I am a professional pastry chef. I've been doing it for about 8 years. I was the executive pastry chef at a hotel here in Philadelphia called the Rittenhouse Hotel. And then I had my daughter. And after that, I decided to open up my own little spot because, that's what you do when you have a 6-month-old. Really sensible. But I mean, I had dreamed of having my own place, and this opportunity just kind of popped up, and Essen Bakery happened. Essen is a Jewish style bakery. I grew up in a Jewish home in South Africa. And believe it or not, there's a good sized Jewish community there. So we had, and there were Jewish people in South Africa have also been there for generations. And they really held on to all these recipes and traditions from Eastern Europe, because really most of them came from Lithuania, post World War I. So I grew up with all these specifically, I guess, Lithuanian recipes, but then they were like kind of morphed into some were, kind of given their own spin in South Africa. So we have all these like Jewish dishes in South Africa in the Jewish community, but there are also Jewish bakeries and Jewish butchers, and so I grew up with all of that. And my parents would always buy bread from the Jewish bakery, and they would get rugelach there and babka and all these things that I grew up with. And I kind of wanted to, when I decided to open a bakery, I wanted to basically recreate those things from my childhood, but make them even better. I mean, I'm a trained pastry chef. I had experience, and I knew that I could make the recipes better than I had growing up, or better than what I've even tried in America. And, Philly is affiliate, especially at the time 4 years ago, could really do with some new bakeries. We're a little bit lacking. I would say today we're not. Quite a few great bakeries have cropped up, but I really felt like we were lacking, and I really wanted to use my heritage as the inspiration for this concept. We do infuse a lot of French technique and a lot of general things that you want to get at a bakery, such as croissants, danishes, things like that. But we do have our own bagels that are amazing. Bagels, challah bread, rye bread, the black and white cookies. Our chocolate halva is a bestseller, and our chocolate rugelach are incredible. They're the best rugelach you'll find in America or in the world. I guarantee it. But we really worked very hard on these recipes to get them to be really special. And you could tell our black and white cookies are special because we really focus on quality, and we incorporate all these things that we know will make it better, like the high quality dark chocolate. A black and white cookie is usually not frosted with ganache. Usually it would be a royal icing with cocoa powder added to it, but this is just so much more decadent and so much more delicious. And then of course the little orange zest in the batter gives a really unique flavor. The vanilla bean in the royal icing, if you can get your hands on vanilla bean paste or vanilla beans, it really makes a difference. So that's my class, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go to the chat now and look for your questions. So the cookies aren't flat. They don't. Yeah, I would say they need a bit of a hump. If they do land up with this hump. When you bake if you bake yours right after mixing, they'll actually spread more and we'll have less of that hump. These were baked cold. The batter was still cold. So I told you we freeze the half domes. I pulled those out of the freezer, thawed them, but they were still cold when they went in. And you'll get more of that shape. If it didn't have that hump, that would mean it spread more, and you just end up with something flatter and wider, which would just be more icing to cake, basically. So thank you for adding the link for the offset spatula. If you don't have one at home, just buy one. They're like $3 or something. You have to have an offset spatula. It's really an indispensable tool. Thank you, Susan, for saying that our challah is amazing. I agree. Anything gluten-free? Really good question. I tend to stay away from gluten-free. I tend to stay away from what I don't know. I'm not a professional at gluten-free. I haven't spent a lot of time on creating gluten-free recipes or vegan recipes, and I prefer to stay away from the things that I don't know. However, we make a flawless chocolate cake that is amazing, but and it's a recipe I've had for years that I made as a pastry chef that I always loved, but that's something that was never intended to have gluten, and that's why I make it, and that's why I enjoy making it, because I tend to stay away from like substituting. However, we just worked on a new recipe, which wasn't me, it was my bakers decided they wanted to make, we had nut flours sitting in the pantry, and they wanted to make a cookie with that. And they've come up with a really awesome like hazelnut almond cookie that we're going to be selling that is gluten-free. It has a little gluten-free flour mix. And I'm really excited about that one because it's got awesome like almond hazelnut flavor and great chew to it. So how did I become a pastry chef? I went to the CIA in California. It's called the Greystone campus. It's in St. Helena, California. And go if you want to do culinary school and you can afford it, do it. It's an amazing school. I really think I got an incredible education there. It's also what got me to where I am, because the connections I made in culinary school there are really what accelerated my career. To be frank, I got actually during culinary school, while I was still there, the way they do their program, you do your externship in the middle. And I got my externship at the restaurant at Meadowood, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant. So already right out of culinary school, I was working at one of the top places in the country, really, which is so cool. And it's because of where the school is located and the fact that the restaurants work and the way the school really loves to work with restaurants, providing interns, and it's a great relationship. And it just gets you into the industry. I mean, it's great for making those connections. It's a hefty price, but I don't regret it. I think it was an incredible experience, and I had awesome instructors who I still keep in touch with today. So can you do this recipe by substituting 1-to-1 gluten-free flour? I have never tried. I would caution that it may come out, because it is a lot of flour. You know, it's really a recipe that relies on the flour and the gluten. It may come out chalky. That's how gluten-free flours tend to give you that mouthfeel. But I would give it a shot. I mean, why not? It's worth trying. You could try maybe using the Bob's Rizzo 1-to-1 flour mix. And I don't know if you would change anything about the recipe. Like I was saying, I haven't messed around a lot with making traditionally recipes that traditionally rely on gluten-free. I do not have a cookbook. I'm not planning one, and I can't believe how much I get that question. I get that question so much that I feel like I should be planning a cookbook. I've always had this perception that you make a cookbook like towards the end of your career. Like once you've done so much and you have like a wealth of knowledge, but it would be fun. If I did a cookbook, I would want it to be really unique. So I need to, you know, decide what that unique angle is, and I want it to be like fun and interesting and something different. So maybe, hopefully one day. Thank you, everyone. Oh, thank you, Roz, you're here. Thank you for coming. And thank you, Michaela. I'm glad it was informative. That's what I was hoping for. And yeah, I hope that some of you are in the Philly area and can visit the shop. We are open Thursday to Sunday. Right now during COVID, we're just doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 8:30 to 3. And we are serving through the window. So the shop is open. You can pre-order online for next day. So all online ordering is for the next day. And it's how we're doing pre-orders now. We do also have a delivery option on pre-orders, which is awesome. So if you're quarantining, if you're at home, we do contactless delivery. But the shop is open, and our shop is so tiny, and you know, maintaining a safe space for us I think is impossible. So so what we're doing is we're just serving out the window, and we actually have big plans for we're taking over the parking spaces there, we're putting seating out there, and so it's going to be great. And oh, hi, you love my river. Thank you. That's my mom. Thank you so much for all the comments and compliments. The website says everything is sold out. It does, because we are not open tomorrow. But if you go on the website tomorrow, the inventory will refresh for the next day. We do refresh at 8 a.m. So anytime after 8 a.m. you could place your order the next day. That recipe, how many cookies does it make? Actually, I have no idea. Let me see. Oh goodness. I'm guessing you'll get about 15 cookies, maybe at least. Linda, I'm not sure what your question is about the town in Lithuania, which, I mean, I don't know if you're asking about my own family. I think my mom should answer that question. I think my father's family really comes from Russia or Lithuania, but I'm not sure exactly where. They've also, my dad's family has been in South Africa for a couple generations. And Sharona, yay, hi! Awesome. And Sharona, I do hope you'll make them, and I hope that ours are better than yours, so you'll find them. No, I hope they're great. They're going to be awesome. And if they're not awesome, try again. You'll get them to be awesome. So yeah, I hope that whoever's in the area will come. Do we ship? That's a really good question. I'm sorry, right now we're not shipping. I just have a busy life and a busy schedule, and I still haven't worked out shipping. I hope it's on the agenda. I hope to do that one day once I've worked it out. You know, the logistics basically. Hopefully we'll start shipping. I do get asked that a lot, and I would love to be able to ship out products across the country. But I do hope that if you're ever visiting Philly, that you'll come visit us. We're a really cute little shop. It's easy to miss us, but if you look us up, we're on Passaic Avenue in the East Passaic neighborhood of Philly, which is really cool. It's, you know, there's this commercial corridor that's really been revived. It used to be old Italian shops, used to be like its little hub of South Philly, and this like young generation has sort of like moved in and revived it and opened restaurants and bars, and a lot has happened on East Passaic. And it's actually really, really, I can't even express how supportive this community is. It's really what keeps us, all of us, in business. It's how much people really make an effort to shop local and to eat local and to support their local coffee shops, bakeries, butcher shop, restaurants, bars, everything. If not for that community that lives around Passaic Avenue, we would not be able to stay open because we can't rely on just Saturday and Sunday foot traffic. So we love East Passaic. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you so much. And I did want to let you all know that the money that you donate is going to go straight to my staff as like basically a virtual tip to help them out. Some are still laid off, some are working, but everyone could use a hand right now.
Tova, I think there were two questions you skipped. Is the orange oil a must, or do other substitutes work? And what would it look like if the batter broke? Those two questions.
Great question. So the orange oil is a must, I would say, but it doesn't have to be orange oil. It could be orange zest. So if you take a microplane to just grab an orange and microplane it, a microplane is one of those really fine graters because you only want to get the skin, no pith. The pith is the white part. Let me see. I think in the recipe, did I write in there? Oh, okay, it says zest of 1 orange. So I would recommend that if you don't have the orange oil. We'll give you the same flavor. What will it look like if it's broken? So when your creamed butter breaks, it looks like globules of fat floating in liquid. So it will look like the fat and liquid have separated, you know, but in like tiny little globules. I don't know what word to use. Globules is such a funny word. But you know when a vinaigrette breaks, similar kind of thing. It's like you could see the separation between the liquid and the fat. Thanks, guys. That was really fun.